many of you guys have ever taken apart a lock and you don't know how to get it back together? Especially when I was a newbie, I did it all the time and I didn't want to throw things away, so what I did is I just stuck everything in these little Ziploc bags, all the pieces that, a lot of times a lock, when I was taking it apart, it disassembled itself faster than my eye could follow, and I really didn't want to throw it all away, so threw it in a Ziploc bag, threw it in a drawer, and forgot about it. Tried to forget about it. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give you a couple of tips on how to reassemble locks. And what brought this to my attention, first of all, a lot of you had sent in emails asking for this video. And secondly, Flywheel sent me an older Yale, but it's complete with a key, but it's called zero-bitted, which means there's nothing inside of it. No pins, no springs, no nothing. And he asked me to pin it up into kind of a tricky lock and send it out to somebody. So here are the basics of what you're going to need. You're going to need a key. You'll need the core, in this case a 6-pin core. You'll need what's called the Bible. This is the part that's going to hold our security pins and our springs. And then you'll need some kind of mechanism to hold everything together. In this case, we got a circlip. All the different locks, they use different ways to hold them together. Little screws and plates and things like that, but we're just going to stick with this circlip. All right, let's start with what I think is probably the easiest part. All right, we're going to pin this lock. That's the very first step. And when I started as a newbie, I didn't have one of these neat kits that contains, like, I don't know, 19.3 million different types of pins. I had a Ziploc bag full of pins of various sizes that I'd taken out of all of the locks that I'd taken apart. And I would just pick through it until I found the right size. Well, that's the trick, isn't it? How do you know what the right size is? Well, all you do is you take your key, you stick it inside of there, and then you get yourself a pair of tweezers. Now this is a good time to talk about some of the stuff that you're going to need. Well, the first thing we need is some pinning tweezers. Now when you look at pinning tweezers, you'll notice on the very tip, when you put them together, there's a little kind of a half round hole that helps you hold the cat hair, the pin. And you see that one's filed out. This one, these are from Sparrows. These are like $8. I think these are from Peterson. They're just a little bit different in design. I think these are also $8 or $10. We got a pair of homemade ones. In fact, one of the subscribers made this for me. Just get a round file and round off half of it just to hold that pin. Or you can just use, like I used in the very beginning when I started, these really cheap tweezers. I think they're surgical tweezers made in Pakistan. These are like $2 in a dollar store. So that's what you need, a pair of tweezers. Now what we're going to do, let me get rid of that, we're just going to go through this pinning kit or through our bag of pins, and we're going to find something that fits this key. Now when we look at our key, come on baby, we can get a pretty good idea of how the pins should fit. So that first pin, we're looking for kind of a medium-sized pin, and pin number 2, they're a little deeper, and so forth. So what we're going to do, I'll just grab a pair of tweezers, and I don't know which of these. Now when you look at a pinning kit, quite honestly, people are going to ask, I got this off eBay, it's like $85. All of these pins here, you're never going to use them, unless you're master wafering locks. I never do that. So for me, these are all pretty much junk. The pins that I am going to be using that are interesting are the ones on this side. These are all different key pins, and if you look at the numbers very closely, see if I can zoom in a little bit, you can see that they're all numbered. And so when we look at, say, this one, that's 0.225 inches. B means bottom, 0.230, 0.235, etc. And it goes all the way up to 0.360. So we got very short pins on the bottom left, and we got very long ones on the top right. Alright, so that's what we're dealing with. Now you'll notice these are 0.05 difference. Well, there's been a lot of questions about if I buy a pinning kit, 0.05, 0.03, what's the difference? Fellas, there's no difference really. The difference is in length, and I've gone with these. There's fewer key pins to deal with. I've never wished I had a pin that's halfway in between any of these. So for unless you're pinning up precision locks or you're just really anal about it, the 0.05 is just fine. I wouldn't worry about getting the more expensive kits. Alright, so enough of that. How do we know? Well, I generally will grab a random pin. I'll grab this red one, it's 0.310, and I'll stick them in that first hole. Now you'll notice they're different colors, and it makes it easier if you drop a pin to find the right hole to put it back. And unfortunately they're all red, they're all green, they're all silver, they're all purple, and then gold on the far left. So if you drop a red pin and it happens to drop in one of these, you're never going to know it. So when you drop your pins in, generally don't have it over the top of your pinning tray. Alright, so when we look at this guy, we can see that .230 is probably too long, so we're not going to go with him. Well, now we're going to drop down. Let's drop down to this guy, .210. Let's drop him in. Now, when you look from the side, it looks pretty good, but then as we rotate, you notice he sits just a little bit deep inside of there. Well, if we settle on him, that's just not going to work. When we put this lock back together, this key's not going to work. We're going to have to pick it open. So that one obviously is cut too low, so we'll get rid of him. Well, just to keep this a little bit short, I happen to know it's a .255. So I take a 255, I drop him down the side of there, and you'll notice he is not, come on, focus. He's not inside of there, and he doesn't stick up. He's perfectly flush with the top. That's exactly what you want when you pin this bad boy up. So let me go ahead and pin the rest of these up, and we'll get on with the next step. Alright, got it all the way pinned up. It's perfectly flush, you can see that, and key slides in very smoothly. Everything lines up just perfectly. Now, you'll notice that I've left that hole number 6 empty. And that's for a reason. That's because this is only a 5-pin lock. So you can see he lines up with all 5, the first 5, but that last one, there's no groove for him. So what we want to do, this is the first tip on how to screw your buddy. We can put a pin in that last one so that it will ride on the very tip of that bow. So the pin will actually not sit in a groove. Let me get some focus going on here. Too much background noise. Well, it won't fit in the groove. He's actually going to ride on the very tip of the bow. So, when we put our key in there, we'll simply look around, find a pin that fits up against the tip of that bow and also is flush. So now we've taken a 5-pin key and we made a 6-pin lock out of it. So, unless somebody knows you've put 6 pins in there, they'll never know it if they get a glance at your key. Alright, we got this pinned up. That's the easy part. Now let's go ahead and move on to the part that I think is confusing a lot of people, and that would be putting pins inside of the Bible. How do we do that? Well, the next thing you want to think about are springs. Now, it's too easy to use all the same springs, but then that means the resistance and all the pins will be exactly the same. They'll be predictable. And of course, that's not what we're after. We want to screw our buddy, right? And the way that we do that is we use a wide variety of different springs. Very densely coiled springs there, very lightly coiled copper springs there, steel springs. These are all going to give different levels of resistance when somebody tries to pick our lock and give them a different feel. It's going to confuse them, and that's what we want. So pick some different springs. We need 6 of them, and now we're going to move to pinning. Well guys, all the security of this lock really comes from our choices now. What do we want to put inside of this? It's called the Bible. It's the part that holds the springs and holds the security pins. What do we want to put in there? Do we just want to use, standard pins, things like that? Because if we do, that means somebody can probably rake our lock, even with all 6 pins populated. So hopefully we'll choose some kind of security pins. Now inside of this kit, it comes with a whole bunch of different ones. We don't want to use the same security pin because then again, it gets predictable for the picker. We want to use different lengths, different types of spools. We want to use serrated pins. There's a whole family of security pins. We can use these are all ASA pins, Christmas tree pins. We can use barrel pins. We can use serrated T-pins, even narrow at the top. My goodness, there's just so many different choices. Why would we ever choose to use one of these standard pins? That's why I say everything on the right-hand side here of this picking kit, this is mostly useless except for the single row that they give us that contains spool pins. Everything else here, junk, fellas. Alright, let's pick out some security pins. Well, this is what it's going to look like. This is what we've got. These are the normal key pins that we've just sized to fit inside of the core. And I've chosen some pretty nasty looking, let me angle this a little bit different, a variety of nasty pins. I've got a very deeply cut spool pin, a regular spool pin, a longer steel spool pin. We got an ASA serrated pin here. We have a T-pin that I'm going to put in this thing, and then we have another one of these cool little spools. So those are the things that we've gotten. Plus, I've chosen 6 different springs to go inside of our lock. Well, I showed you how to get these key pins into that. Well, now we need to worry about how to get all of this junk up inside of here. And I've come up with a way to try to demonstrate that. Well, this next part is pretty tedious, and I've got a feeling this is what frustrates most new pickers, is getting all of those guts back inside of this tight little space right here, and inside of each of those 6 different cylinders. Now this is a good time to talk about a different tool that you're going to need. I've already talked about your tweezers. You're also going to need some followers, and I'll show you how to use them in a minute. But your followers don't have to be pretty. Here's some steel followers that came with the pinning kit. Very, very inexpensive. Here are some brass ones I made, about the same kind of thing. Here are some by HPC that I bought, I think, from South Ord. There's 3 of them in there, different shapes, different sizes. Fellas, it can be made out of paper. You can make them out of cardboard. You can use AA batteries. It really doesn't matter. All you need is something that'll fit inside of that hole, and it doesn't have to be pretty. Plastic is fine. Okay, what are we going to do? We're going to take our tweezers. We're going to take one of our springs, and we're going to start taking our springs and populating those 6 holes up inside of there. Now I know you can't see this, so I've come up with a different method to help demonstrate what it is that we're doing. If I can get it to cooperate here, I've cut the top off of the lock so you can see down inside of it, and if I can get it to zoom, this would be fantastic. There we go. And we're missing a spring, but let's just put a spring right there just for demonstration purposes. Alright, so what we're going to do, we populated all the holes with springs, and then we're going to take our tweezers and we're going to grab one of our security pins. Trying to do this through the camera lens is not such a smart idea. I'm going to grab him by the very top, and I'm going to put him inside of the hole and hold him in place. Now that's not going to be good enough because he's going to want to pop out of there as soon as I release him. So what I'm going to do is take my follower, and from the rear of the lock, I'm working from the rear forward, slide him into the hole and push the follower up against that security pin to hold him in place. So when I let go with my tweezers, he doesn't go anywhere. Put my tweezers on top of him so he can't hop out, push him all the way down below the shear line, and advance my follower over him. So now he's down below the shear line. And then I'm going to populate each of those pins one by one, sliding my follower until I get to this point where all of my pins are in place and my follower is now holding all of them in there. So that's how you get all those tiny components into that very, very small, tight space. Simply use a follower and a pair of tweezers. Pretty simple, fellas. Alright, what do we do next? Alright, we are almost finished, fellas. We got this thing fully loaded with all our security pins and almost back together. Before you do it though, too many times I've reversed these pins when I put it back together. Just do a visual check and make sure that everything is, nothing's been transposed or in the wrong hole. Make sure they're all still level. And then what you'll notice, this Bible has spring-loaded security pins inside of it. So if I line up this gap and I start sliding it in there that way, as soon as that gap appears, they're going to unload themselves into the chamber. So again, I've done it too many times. Turn it sideways so that when you put your core up here beside it, there's no gap on the top there. And then simply line it up and slide it home. Now we got a little bit of a groove inside of that core, but it slides right in there pretty good. Then make sure it works and you're good to go. That's how you do it. Now, do not turn it and pull it because the core will come out. Make sure you put your clip or your screws or however the thing is secured before you start playing with it. Put that clip back on there. That way you don't screw up. Well, fellas, that's how you repin a lock. Maybe you can clean out your junk drawer, get rid of some of those Ziploc bags, and put some locks back together and get them on the street. Send them out to your buddies. And I don't know who's getting this one, but man, I feel sorry for you. Thanks for your time. Stay safe. Flywheel, thank you for the lock, and everybody else, stay legal.